Hi, my name is Dan Humberg, and I am representing HarvestFires.com and fire stop kits to keep your combine from catching fire when it's doing a volatile crop like sunflowers. This video is an instructional video, and we'll show you how to bench assemble the tin set to enclose the hot exhaust components on a Jd9770 combine. The same video will work for a Jd9670 combine. Before I begin the actual assembly process, you probably have just watched the set of videos or the video on how to fold the tin, so we've got that process done. But before we begin the assembly process, I always make this cautionary statement that a fire stop kit won't prevent you from ever possibly having a fire on your combine. You can have lots of different ignition sources on a combine: hot bearings, electrical shorts, failing alternators, rocks, whatever. So there are a number of things that can start a fire in the combine. So the purpose of the fire stop kit is to stop the fires that occur very frequently when dust like that comes from sunflowers encounters the hot engine exhaust components at the turbocharger and the first part of exhaust pipe and maybe the exhaust manifold. So this system protects those. But be aware that you could still have a fire from other sources on the machine, and be vigilant about that. Want you to be safe. All right, let's talk tools for a minute before we begin the assembly process. The material that we're going to assemble is galvanized, 24 gauge galvanized steel, and all of the assembly is going to be done with these #2 square drive pan head sheet metal screws. They're self-drilling, self-tapping screws, and they work really well. And most of the holes, if not all of the holes, the pilot holes, should already be cut in the tin. If we have the tin lined up correctly, there's a larger pilot hole that this will go through relatively easily, and then there's a back pilot hole that's a little bit smaller than the bit, so it has to cut a little bit and makes it thread ends nice and snug. So we've got square drive, #2 square drive, and that's the only thing I would use. I have a number of bits that I use. More than anything else, I use this little Milwaukee #2 square drive bit. Holds these really well, it doesn't strip out. I'll use that in a cordless drill driver most of the time. If you got a lighter, smaller one than this, it's actually better. I use what I've got. I also have about a 6-inch #2 square drive tool, and I have a magnetic extension as well, so I can get that up to about 10 or 12 inches, and you might want to acquire a set of these too. I also have a long one that I've made with a Milwaukee bit and just drilled into an end of electric fence rod and pressed it in there, and a little bit of epoxy and a tight fit, and that also works well for ones that are really hard to reach. On the bench here, there aren't too many that are hard to reach. On the combine, when things are in the way, sometimes it's easier to get in with something long like this. The other one on the combine that you wouldn't necessarily use on the bench is this stubby. That's a Milwaukee bit or another short bit that I've sunk into a handle, and I'll provide one of these with the kit if you buy the kit. It might not be aluminum handle, it might be a wooden handle, but that's our go-to when you have to reach underneath and come back at yourself with one where you can never get a tool in there. So those are the bits we're going to use to do the assembly. All right, we're going to start with piece #1. If you've done the folding, you know this is piece #1. There should be a number here. It's missing because my laser cutter missed those characters this time around. But that's piece #1. Piece #2 should be marked #2 here. I've got it marked with Sharpie. And we'll put those two together. You may have to make some little adjustments in your bends of flanges. This piece actually sits horizontal on the combine, and this one is vertical, so they're going to go together 90 degrees to each other. This wide, long flange should tuck behind the one that right here with my thumb. And we should, if we get it fit in there, have a couple of screw holes right here that line up. On it. There should be some smaller pilot holes here. They're for one of the next pieces. There's one other place where these two will be joined. It's right here by my thumb. Okay. I can also tell you at this point that these holes will match up with holes in the top of the, I think it's probably the valve cover on the top of the engine. And there's a couple of hold downs. Anyway, there are places where we can put a bolt in. We'll put there's an 8mm bolt. There's a couple that we have to take out that hold the wiring harness. We'll put them back and they'll hold this piece in place. That piece is actually bolted down. And then piece number 2 screws to it like we've just done. So that part of the assembly is complete. Alright, we have piece number 3. I still need to fix that keyhole. That's not free to punch down right yet, but we'll fix that in a little bit. Piece number 3 fits into the bottom of piece number 2. There's a series of large pilot holes on number 2. There are 3 smaller pilot holes on number 3, and they go down to this end. It's my left, your right end of the assembly, and this flange sticks down, and so it'll line up with those 3 holes, and that's where we're going to put it. Okay, I'm going to put just those 2 in for the sake of time right now. That gets us piece number 3. This is piece number 4. It's a complicated bit here. Okay, piece number 4 is going to go on this end. I have a series of pilot holes. To me it looks like they're all small, so that means we're going to have to shoot screws through. But we're going to wrap around the front, this front face with this flange. Should line up like that. And this complicated bend we worked on earlier should kind of fit into this arrangement here. And the top flange goes over the top of both parts here. So we get that in the right spot and we can shoot a screw. Okay, and then there's a series of holes here on the bottom. It looks to me like they're both the same size, and so I'm not sure if it matters which piece goes in front here. You're going to have to shoot it through both pieces. I used the screw to strip out the outer one so that it's a little bit larger so we could get it to pull them together. Anyway, we've got pilot holes there to line up and you can put those through. I wish it was this easy to put that together on the machine. This is really in an awkward place. When we do that, we have to snake it around a coolant line here and open these pedals up so that they don't bother that coolant line. Otherwise, that's put together the way it's intended. All right, we're looking at piece number 5. It's got this big circular cutout. That's going to go up against the side of the turbocharger compressor housing. And the piece is going to fit on top of this flat surface that's right on top of the engine itself on the valve cover. It's going to go about right here and fit up against that. But it was not possible when I'm doing the CAD design for this to know exactly where that's going to be this way. So I didn't cut pilot holes through the surface to match these pilot holes. They're cut through for the outer, for the screw to go through, but I didn't know exactly where this was going to be. So you'll actually shoot those through with a long driver bit in place when you get this on there. You just push it up against the compressor housing. I should say just. It's kind of a bitch to get underneath there and get it in place. But when we get it in there, you get it in place, you hold it down, and you shoot screws. You don't need to hit all 3. You need 1 or 2 back here and 1 here in the front, and it'll hold on just fine. But that's where it's going to go. But I can't do it here because I don't know where it's going to be on exactly to put the screw holes in. So that's piece number 6. No, I'm sorry, 5. Piece number 6 is this little filler piece that we bent up, and it goes right here. It'll fit, and it has actually more screws than it needs. Alright, I put 3 out of 5 in there. You need to put them all in. It's probably overkill, but it holds a lot of stuff together there. So that's piece number 6, and it should fit around. There's an electrical sensor that comes out of this hole, or a wiring connection, And so we want to make sure we have clearance around it. If for some reason you don't have good clearance around that sensor, you may need to cut and open up pedals here to fit around that. But it should now fit the way the design is. It should fit around that thing. Also, there will be a bolt, a 3/8 inch, or not 3/8, but 8mm bolt that will be able to go through this opening with a washer under it, and it should hit. Actually, there's a bracket that holds a wiring harness there. You take that off, you put this on, and then that screw will go, or that bolt will go back in there and hold this all together on the machine. So that's piece number 6. Piece number 7 is this other odd little shape piece that we started to bend up before. I've readjusted the bends a little bit, and you'll need to do that too. You might need to tweak these bends a little bit as well. Maybe push this back in here so that it's good and tight. And then this one, bent like this, has these 2 screw holes in the bottom. They will line up down here, and we can shoot screws through and hold that together. Okay, and you can bend that stuff to try to make that fit. This does not need to be completely airtight here. It's going to need to leak air out anyway. Your turbocharger compressor cuts down through here, and so we're trying to tighten up a space that's a complex curved shape, and so that's what that's for. Piece number 7. Piece number 8 is actually the piece that sits on top of the engine block and comes up against the turbo and runs all the way over to almost to the muffler. And kind of starting with a separate part of the assembly, because this doesn't attach directly to the stuff we've already done. It'll get there eventually. Piece number 9 is this odd-shaped outfit here. This cutout where my thumb is goes around the turbocharger bearing. And so this one is going to go, they're going to mate up right here. This tab I'm putting underneath this one here, although they're both small pilot holes because the top will screw on there. And then these 2 screw holes will line up. And that's the only connection between those 2, and I'll put screws in both of those for now. All right, 8 and 9. Okay, this is piece number 10. It's that complicated piece that interacts with the turbocharger geometry actuator, I guess is what you'd call it. Anyway, this is going to go right there. You got 6 holes. We don't need them all right now, but we can put a couple screws in. These aren't hard to reach on the machine. There are some that are. I'm going to put one through this tab in the top. It'll help keep it lined up the way it's supposed to be. All right, so that complicated mess will go around that turbocharger actuator. Piece number 11. We bent it earlier, and I had this flange on the bottom bent 90 degrees. I now discover that's wrong. It's a much more shallow bend. And it is going to only have a single screw initially that holds it on, then we'll put something that'll tie it all together. This piece goes on this front face of number 2 and 7 here, and this screw hole will lay over the top of this one in the corner here and hold it together for now. Okay, that's piece number 11. We get kind of a patchwork here, but that's all right. Okay, piece number 12 is this monster piece here, and it's going to start to tie things together. It's going to lay on top of this, and it should line up with screw holes all over the place there. I'm going to put a couple screws in the bottom end of it here for now. Okay, and these screw holes line up here, but they're both large pilot holes. It means there's probably a piece that goes behind there and joins them as well. If not, it's something I need to fix in the model. That's piece number 12, temporarily in place there. 13 is the rest of the bottom, and it's going to go underneath 12 here, and it's going to join back over to number 3, way back there. And in this case, you can tell by the size, these are small pilot holes. It means they need to be on the inside of number 3 because that's the larger pilot holes, and those will go, screws will go through from underneath. I can hold this in place. Be able to put a screw through here and hold it together. Alright, I'm going to show you that. So this is the bottom now. We had 2 pieces to it, number 3 over here and number 13 here. And they screw to that flange all along that edge. There's more screws to put in there. I got one through here. It looks to me like maybe I've got one pilot hole out of place on here. It doesn't line up with this one. That's probably just a mistake in the computer model. If that happens when you're doing this bench assembly, you can simply hold it in place with the other screws there. It'll be lined up. And shoot it in right through the tin. That worked. Okay, so that piece is on there. 13. All right, let's look at piece 14. 14 has this tab on it, this kind of a dog leg or text, what do you call it, a panhandle, whatever. And that's going to wrap underneath the bottom and should go in place here. See if I can get to where you can see that. This will wrap underneath here. It'll make an enclosure where something goes through, and the holes will line up if we get it squished in place enough. I'm going to try and hit these holes on the side first. All right, 14 in place. There are also screw holes on the bottom here. I'm going to hit one of them. Okay, piece number 14. (15) fits around the bottom of 13 here. So it'll fit underneath. This is 15. It's going to fit with the flanges on the outside. And we can shoot that one on. Alright, 3 will hold that in place. 16 is the mate to that one. And will fit just inside. The flanges here go outside. This bottom edge goes inside of 15. My pilot holes didn't get cut by the laser on this outside piece, so I'd screw those 2 together, but we've got other pieces that'll hold it together now. Now, if we take this assembly that we started before with piece numbers 8, 9, and 10, that will lay over this, or actually go underneath, get inside of these flanges on the end, and we can screw that in place. All right, good enough for that. Now when that piece is in there, it's going to be really floppy. But if we look around on this end now, there are screw holes that line up at where it meets number 12 back here. The last piece to do is the cap on top. There, we got enough in that to hold it all, line everything up. There's still screws to put in there. And now we have the enclosure. The rest of the part that's open here is actually filled in by the engine itself. And I'll point out a couple of things here and give you some advice, and then we're done with this part of the project. These fingers are cut here because you have several things that exit here. I think there's an oil line, there's an electrical sensor that come through this area, and they aren't always in exactly, they're plastic and the other one's ductile metal and stuff, so they aren't always exactly in the same place, but they angle through here. So we've cut these fingers so that if you need to bend them, pry them out a little bit to fit around those parts and give them clearance without dumping a whole lot of air out of this location. That's why we've cut those spots there. So go ahead and do that wherever you need to, but keep it as snug around those as possible without coming up tight against something like an oil line or the electrical line. These edges of these are not real sharp, but they're kind of rough and they're hard from the laser having cut them, so you don't want them rubbing on, vibrating against something important. Same thing here, it goes around an oil line. That oil line comes through here, goes back down there. You look at the routing of that oil line and you might shake your head. Anyway, we have to work around what's there. So that's the enclosure. Go ahead and put all of the screws in so that the holes have all had a screw in them at least once, so that if you have to reach that one from an awkward angle on the machine or reach behind something, you can easily get that part in place. The only one that we haven't put on is piece number 5. Piece number 5 will go right here, and you'll screw it down. You have to go on each side of the compressed air line here, hit a screw there, and maybe one in front here to hold that up against the turbocharger compressor. And then this will be bolted down to the block, and these holes down here also will line up with bolt holes in the block that we can use to fasten that down tight to the enclosure. One other thing I'll point out is once you get this on, and we'll talk about that when we do the installation too, but there's a moving arm actuator that goes out of this area back here up into your turbocharger, and you want to make sure that that is free to run through its full range of motion. If it isn't for some reason, if there's a screw that's interfering with it, you want to leave that screw out or bend something, whatever, to make sure that that actuator can run. I did have one guy last year with an earlier version of this tin, and there was a screw interfering with that actuator, so it affected his engine, and he had to take that screw out. All right. That's the kit for a 9770 or 9670, the assembly process on the bench. Mostly I think it will fit the way it's intended. This is probably an improvement over the previous designs of tin we've done. So good luck with your installation. Have a safe harvest. If you have questions or comments, you can contact me through the Harvest Fires website. There's an email there, that contact that you can send. All right, good luck.